Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you believe to be real is nothing but an illusion. What if I told you that your perception of the world is not fixed, but rather a malleable construction of your consciousness? What if there was a way to access a completely different reality, a way to see beyond the limitations imposed by a conditioned mind? What you are about to discover could change the way you understand your own existence. This is no longer just an abstract theory or a distant philosophical concept. It is a truth that some of the greatest scientists and mystics in history have tried to reveal, and that has been systematically suppressed. One of these men was Jacobo Grinberg, a brilliant neuroscientist who investigated the greatest mystery of all, the true nature of reality. He not only formulated a revolutionary theory about consciousness, but also conducted experiments that prove the human mind has powers that challenge everything we have been taught to believe. But then something happened. Before he could share his findings with the world, he disappeared without a trace. No body was found, no concrete clues, just silence. A man who dared to question the very structure of reality and was erased. The question is, what did he discover that was so dangerous? What did he know that could completely change the way we perceive existence? And more importantly, how can this knowledge free you from the illusion that keeps you bound to a limited reality? If you have the courage to go beyond the superficial version of the world, stay until the end. Because once you absorb this information, your consciousness will never be the same. Welcome to Occultum Veritas. To understand the depth of what Jacobo Grinberg discovered, we first need to understand who he really was. And more than that, we need to comprehend why his research so disturbed the power systems that govern the way we perceive reality. Jacobo Grinberg was not just an ordinary scientist. He was a neuropsychologist and researcher with an obsessive interest in a topic that few dared to explore: human consciousness. While conventional science limited itself to studying the brain as a biological machine, Grinberg believed that the mind was something much greater. For him, consciousness was not merely a byproduct of brain activity. It was the very foundation of reality. From an early age, his quest for knowledge transcended the boundaries of traditional academia. Influenced by spiritual masters, ancient shamanic traditions, and the study of mystical texts, he sought to unite esotericism with science. His mission: to empirically prove that the human mind had the power to shape reality itself. Grinberg obtained his PhD in neuropsychology from the National Autonomous University of Mexico and even conducted advanced research in the United States, including studies at New York University. But his true journey began when he decided to explore something that Western science completely ignored: the hidden powers of the mind and how it interacts with the universe. This led him to study the shamans of Mexico, seeking to understand how they managed to perform inexplicable healings, enter altered states of consciousness, and seemingly defy the laws of physics. His most famous encounter was with the enigmatic healer named Pachita, a woman who, according to witnesses, could perform spiritual surgeries without any conventional instruments, only with a rusty knife and the power of intention. Jacobo Grinberg decided to study Pachita closely. He observed phenomena that traditional science would consider impossible: organs being removed and replaced without anesthesia, wounds healing instantly, bodies becoming translucent during rituals. But instead of dismissing these events as quackery, Grinberg wanted to prove that something much greater was happening. The conclusion he reached was terrifying for the scientific establishment: matter, time, and space are not fixed. Reality is an energetic field that can be shaped by the mind. What Pachita did was not a miracle, but rather an advanced application of knowledge that our civilization has forgotten, or has been taught to forget. It was from these experiences that Grinberg developed his most revolutionary theory, the synergic theory, a scientific explanation for the mystical phenomena that challenge conventional logic. But before understanding this theory, you need to know one thing. As soon as he began to share these discoveries, his life took a strange turn. He began to be followed. His behavior changed. He seemed to know that he was tampering with something much greater than he had imagined. Until one day, he simply disappeared. What did he discover that was so dangerous? And why could this completely change the way you perceive your own existence? In the next section, we will dive into the synergic theory, Jacobo Grinberg's definitive explanation of the true nature of reality. What if everything you know as reality is just an illusion created by your own mind? What if there existed an invisible field, an energetic web that connects everything and everyone, and that could be shaped by your consciousness? This is the basis of the synergic theory, the most revolutionary discovery of Jacobo Grinberg, and possibly the reason why he disappeared without a trace. Traditional science teaches that reality is a set of fixed and independent objects. You are here, the world is out there, and events happen in a linear manner. But what if this is completely wrong? Grinberg believed that reality is not objective, but rather a projection of the mind interacting with a fundamental energetic field. This field would be like an invisible ocean of information, an underlying structure that supports everything we experience as the physical world. But here's the most shocking part. The way each person perceives reality depends on how their consciousness connects to and interprets this field. In other words, reality is not something fixed. It is interpretative. According to Grinberg, the brain is not just a passive receiver of information from the external world. In fact, it acts as a projector, shaping how we perceive existence. What you see, hear, and feel is not objective reality, but rather a filtered and constructed version of the world based on the limitations of your mind. Imagine you are wearing glasses with colored lenses. If the lens is blue, the whole world will seem blue. If the lens is red, everything will appear red. But what if these glasses were not physical, but rather mental? What if the way you perceive the world is just a programming that can be altered? This means that two people can be in the same place, but see completely different realities. And more than that, if you change your perception, you change your reality. One of the most advanced concepts of the synergic theory is the unified neural field. Grinberg suggested that all minds are connected to this invisible field of information, as if we were individual neurons within a large cosmic brain. This would explain phenomena such as telepathy, synchronicities, and even the altered states of consciousness experienced by mystics and shamans. If the brain can tune into this field correctly, it can access information beyond the common senses, perceiving a much broader reality. And here's the most important detail. If reality is shaped by the mind, then anyone can train their consciousness to access higher levels of perception. If Grinberg was right, this means that everything we believe to be impossible, manipulating matter with the mind, healing diseases merely with intention, accessing information beyond time and space, is not only real, but is part of the true nature of existence. And now you understand why this knowledge may have been considered dangerous, because once you understand that reality can be manipulated by consciousness, you're no longer controllable. You're no longer a cog in the system. You become a creator. But Grinberg didn't just stay in theory. He conducted experiments to prove all of this, And the results were so surprising that they threatened the pillars of traditional science. In the next segment, we will explore the experiments that Jacobo Grinberg conducted to demonstrate that the human mind can transcend the laws of physics, and how these discoveries can change your life forever. Theory without evidence is just speculation, and Jacobo Grinberg knew that. He didn't just want to talk about the possibility of consciousness shaping reality. He wanted to prove it, and that's exactly what he did. For years, Grinberg conducted a series of rigorous experiments to demonstrate that the human mind can transcend the known laws of physics. What he discovered was so impactful that if widely accepted, it would completely change our understanding of the universe and our own role in it. The telepathy experiment, the scientific proof of the unified neural field. One of the most impressive experiments conducted by Grinberg involved the transmission of thoughts and emotions between two people physically separated. He wanted to test whether consciousness could communicate directly without the use of any conventional physical means. Here's what he did. He took two participants and placed them in a deep state of relaxation through meditation techniques and mental synchronization. Then, he separated them into distinct rooms, isolated by physical and electromagnetic barriers. One of them was exposed to intense visual and auditory stimuli, while the other remained in a neutral environment. Meanwhile, electrodes monitored the brain activity of both. The result? The brainwaves of the second participant responded to the stimuli received by the first, as if the two minds were connected by an invisible channel. This should not have been possible according to conventional science, but it happened, repeatedly. Grinberg was faced with the first real evidence that human consciousness is not confined to the brain. It can interact with something much larger, an informational field that transcends time and space. But he didn't stop there. Experiments with shamans and altered states of consciousness. Another major interest of Grinberg was studying the workings of the minds of shamans and healers, people who seemingly could manipulate reality through consciousness. He conducted tests to analyze the brain activity of shamans while they performed their rituals. What he discovered was shocking. During altered states of consciousness, the electrical activity of the shamans' brains entered patterns completely different from those of an ordinary mind, accessing frequencies that neuroscience did not understand. They could manipulate their brainwaves so precisely that they seemed to disconnect from conventional reality and operate at a different level of perception. Some shamans were able to induce altered states in others simply through presence and intention, without the use of psychoactive substances. This reinforced the idea that consciousness can directly interact with the structure of reality, and that Western science was only scratching the surface of this knowledge. What does this mean for you? If these experiments are real, and there is strong evidence that they are, it means that we are not limited to what our senses perceive. It means that your mind may be connected to something greater, something that society and conventional science prefer to ignore. And here's the most unsettling question. If we can access expanded states of consciousness, if we can influence reality with our minds, then why aren't we taught this? What Grinberg discovered was dangerous, because a world where people understand the true power of consciousness is a world where they can no longer be manipulated. Now, think about this. A scientist who proved all of this simply disappeared, without a trace, without explanation. What happened to him? And more importantly, why did they want to silence him? In the next segment, we will explore the mysterious disappearance of Jacobo Grinberg and the theories behind what may have really happened to him. Here is a fact that no one can deny. Scientists who get too close to certain dangerous truths have a habit of disappearing, and Jacobo Grinberg was no exception. He was not just an academic studying consciousness from a theoretical perspective. He was dealing with something much bigger, something that, if proven, could topple the entire structure of reality as we know it. He was stating with evidence that the physical world is not fixed, that matter can be manipulated by the mind, and that there's an invisible web connecting everything and everyone. This is not just a beautiful spiritual concept. This is a threat to any system that relies on controlling perception. The day Jacobo Grinberg disappeared. On December 8, 1994, Jacobo Grinberg vanished. He simply disappeared without a trace. There was no emergency phone call, no farewell letter, nothing to suggest that he planned to flee or hide. He had appointments scheduled for the following days, ongoing projects, and an established career. But then, he ceased to exist. Investigations began, but what they revealed only made the case stranger. His wife, Teresa Mandel, was the last person to see him. She claimed that Jacobo had left home normally, but then her answers began to contradict each other. Shortly after, she disappeared as well. Some witnesses reported that Jacobo had been restless in the weeks prior, as if he felt he was being watched. He seemed to know that he had tampered with something too big. The theories about his disappearance range from the obvious to the absurd, but there are three main hypotheses that attempt to explain what might have happened. 1. Was he eliminated for discovering something forbidden? Grinberg was conducting experiments that challenged traditional physics. If the mind can manipulate reality, it means that those who know how to control perception have absolute power over the world. And now think, who controls society's perception? Who dictates what is real and what is impossible? If Grinberg truly found irrefutable proof that consciousness shapes matter, he became a direct threat to the established paradigm. Scientists who challenge the power structure, especially those who touch on topics like mind control, reality manipulation, and telepathy, often end up dead or disappear under strange circumstances. Now, imagine someone like Grinberg managing to scientifically prove that our mind has hidden capabilities. This would destroy the illusion that keeps us trapped within a limited and controlled reality. 2. Was he kidnapped to work on secret research? Another theory suggests that Grinberg was not killed, but rather forcibly recruited. It is no secret that governments and intelligence agencies have always shown a peculiar interest in psychic phenomena. Just look at CIA projects like the Stargate project, where military personnel studied remote viewing and telepathy for strategic purposes. If Grinberg was coming to dangerously close conclusions to what these groups already knew, why not force him to work for them? Many believe he may have been taken to secret facilities, where his knowledge would be used for purposes that would never reach the public. After all, if there is something that the established powers would never allow, it would be knowledge about how to escape the prison of perception imposed by society. 3. Did he discover something so great that he chose to disappear? The third possibility is even more enigmatic. What if Grinberg did not disappear because he was captured, but because he discovered a way to transcend this reality? If the synergic theory is correct, if consciousness can indeed modify time and space, then perhaps Jacobo found a method to exit our level of perception. Shamans and spiritual masters speak of techniques to access higher dimensions and even to disappear from ordinary reality. If Grinberg reached the point of understanding how to interact directly with the unified neural field, he might have achieved a state in which his physical presence was no longer necessary. Does it sound absurd? Perhaps. But we are dealing with a man who studied the boundaries of the impossible, and perhaps he went beyond them. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. Grinberg left us clues about the true nature of existence. He was one of the few scientists who dared to assert, with theoretical and experimental grounding, that reality is not something fixed, but rather a projection of consciousness. And here is the crucial point. If consciousness shapes reality, then whoever controls your consciousness controls your life. Now, the most important question: how can you use this knowledge to free yourself from the illusion and transform your reality? In the next section, we will explore how these discoveries directly affect your life and what you can do to awaken to this hidden truth. Now that you know that Jacobo Grinberg proved that consciousness shapes reality, the most important moment has arrived. What does this mean for you? Here is the truth that no one has told you. The world you see is not real. It is a construction of your mind, based on beliefs, conditioning, and programming that have been installed in you since the day you were born. Think about it. How many times have you felt that life is limited, that certain things are simply not possible, that there is a set of fixed rules governing your existence? All of this is nothing but an illusion imposed on your consciousness. Grinberg's synergic theory teaches us that reality is not a fixed space where events simply happen. It is a constantly changing field, shaped by the interaction between your mind and the energetic matrix of the universe. And if this is true, and there is much evidence that it is, then what is stopping you from completely transforming your life? How the illusion is created and maintained. From an early age, we are taught to believe that external reality is something independent of us. School, media, religion, culture, everything reinforces the idea that the world is solid and unchangeable, and that you have no power over it. But here is the secret. This illusion is necessary to maintain control over you. If people knew that reality responds to their perception, no one would accept living within the limits imposed by the system. You would not accept working in a job you hate. You would not accept being programmed by fear. You would not accept the idea that you are trapped in a single line of possibilities. The elite that controls the narrative of the world depends on your belief in limitation. They make you believe that change is difficult, that certain goals are unattainable, and that you are at the mercy of circumstances. But Grinberg proved that this is not true. If your perception shapes reality, then you have infinite power to transform your own existence. And this leads us to the most important question. How can you break free from this illusion and start creating your own reality? How to reprogram your consciousness and break the control. Now that you know that the world around you is not fixed, but rather a projection of your mind, the next step is to learn to take control of that projection. Here are 3 techniques based on Grinberg's discoveries to change your reality. Break the collective hypnosis. Question everything you believe to be true. Who told you that you need to live within a system that limits your choices? Who told you that certain dreams are impossible? Start to notice the patterns of your own mind and identify the beliefs that have been imposed on you without questioning. Experience altered states of consciousness. Grinberg studied shamans because he knew they had techniques to access higher dimensions of reality. Practices such as deep meditation, conscious breathing, and intense visualizations can help you experience states where your mind transcends common perception. Use attention as a tool for creation. Where you place your attention, you place your energy. Stop feeding the illusion of a limited reality. Instead, focus your consciousness on the reality you want to create. Everything starts in the mind. What you deeply believe, sooner or later, manifests. These are not empty, mystical ideas. They are scientific principles based on how consciousness interacts with the structure of the universe. And now comes the final question. If you know you can change your reality, why continue living within the illusion? In the next section, we will explore the true power of the human mind and how this knowledge can transform your life forever. If reality can be shaped by consciousness, why do most people live trapped in a limited existence? Why are we taught to believe that the external world has more control over us than we have over it? The answer is simple. The true power of the human mind has been forgotten. Or rather, it has been deliberately hidden. Jacobo Grinberg was not the first to discover that the human mind has capabilities that challenge traditional physics. Before him, mystics, alchemists, initiates in esoteric schools, and shamans already knew this. The difference is that he tried to bring this knowledge into science, providing a foundation that made it impossible to ignore. But here lies the problem. The closer someone gets to the truth, the more dangerous they become to those who control the narrative of reality. What Grinberg revealed goes against everything we have been taught about the nature of existence. He showed that consciousness is the basis of reality, not a byproduct of the brain. Time and space are merely mental constructs and can be manipulated by perception. The human mind can directly interact with the informational field of the universe, accessing knowledge and abilities that seem supernatural. This means that the laws governing your life are not absolute. They are a reflection of the beliefs and perceptions you hold. And now comes the most important question. If you have such great power, why have you never learned to use it? The answer is obvious. Because a human being who understands the depth of their power cannot be controlled. The power to create and alter reality. Modern science is just beginning to confirm something that spiritual traditions have always known. The observer influences reality. This was proven in the famous double-slit experiment, where particles behave differently depending on human observation. If this happens at the quantum level, what prevents it from happening at the macro level, in the day-to-day of your life? What Grinberg proposed is that reality is not just a shadow of the quantum world, but rather an interactive field where the mind can actively operate. This means that your beliefs, intentions, and focus determine what you experience. If everything you know as reality is a construction of your mind, then the first step to freeing yourself is to learn to control that construction. Here are 3 essential practices to start this process. Reprogram your subconscious. Everything you believe today was programmed into you throughout your life. You can choose a new programming. Use daily affirmations, creative visualization, and self-hypnosis to rewrite your beliefs about what is possible. Train your focus and attention. Most people waste their attention on distractions, which weakens their ability to shape reality. Start paying attention to what you mentally feed. Recurring thoughts become energetic patterns that define your experience. Experience elevated states of consciousness. Techniques such as deep meditation, sensory deprivation, and shamanic practices can expand your perception of reality. The more you step out of the ordinary state of consciousness, the more you realize that the material world is just an interface of something much greater. Are you ready to embrace this power? The knowledge that Grinberg revealed is not just an interesting theory. It is a call for you to awaken to the true power of your mind. The final question is, will you continue living within the illusion imposed by society? Or will you begin to test the limits of your consciousness? In the next section, we will conclude this journey and reveal the final step to applying this knowledge in your life. Now, you know the truth. Reality is not fixed. It is a moldable field, controlled by your consciousness. Jacobo Grinberg proved this and mysteriously disappeared shortly after. What he discovered may have been too dangerous for those who control the narrative of reality. But now, this truth is in your hands. The question is no longer whether this is real or not, but what you will do with this information. Most people will hear this and continue living as before, following the programming that has been imposed on them since birth. But a few will awaken. You feel it, don't you? Something inside you knows that reality is not exactly as it has been taught. You have always suspected that there is more, that there is a hidden level behind what society presents as normal. You are not here by chance. If reality is shaped by the mind, then it means you have always had power over it. But you were never taught how to use it. They made you believe that you are just a passenger in this experience, when in fact you are the architect. Now you have knowledge that few possess. You can ignore it and continue to be just another face in the crowd, or you can use it to transform your existence. This is not about believing blindly. It is about testing, observing, and proving it for yourself. But the system does not want you to discover this. Because when you realize that your mind can shape reality, no one can control you anymore. The game changes completely. You cease to be a piece and become the player. You begin to see the patterns that have always been there, but that your dormant mind could not perceive. You see beyond the veil. Now, the choice is before you. Continue living on autopilot or take control. If you feel that this truth resonates within you, don't stop here. Continue the journey. Watch the next video because it contains another key piece of this puzzle. Awakening does not happen all at once. It is a process. And every piece of information you absorb brings you closer to the reality that has always been hidden.